And I declare the meeting open, and I welcome the people who are watching this meeting online. Before we commence with the meeting, I wish to acknowledge Rena Pascoe. It's with great sadness that I advise members of the town of Walkerville that we've lost one of its oldest and dearest residents. Rena was 99 earlier this year, and I was most fortunate to join her and friends to celebrate her milestone birthday. I went to a morning tea and then a lunch. Rena was one of the first women to enlist in the Air Force in the Second World War, and if the Battle of the Coral Sea in May 1942 had been lost, it was assumed Australia could be invaded, so one of her duties was to send out the invasion code signal NXY 550. She was a long-serving member and committee member of the RSL, selling raffle tickets each Friday for the Walkerville Vietnam Veterans Association, and also assisting in the appeals for both Anzac Day and Remembrance Day. Many will remember her placing wreaths on the memorial representing members of the Air Force Association of South Australia and World War II veterans during the service of both Anzac Day and Remembrance Day. Others will remember her at Table 1 at Nest, where she would normally be found each morning after 10 a.m, believe me, no one ever sat on Table 1, having morning tea and a chat to many who stopped by, and I'm pleased to say that there wasn't a Table 1 today at Nest. It was a very sad day yesterday when I got a text from her family, because the town has lost a lovely woman that contributed so much to our community. Thank you. On some really good news, the Walkerville Primary School I'll read it out. Many of you will know that the Walkerville Council proudly supported the Walkerville Primary School as part of their Sala exhibition, Walk the Terrace with the Walkerville Primary School. Students from years 3, 4 and 5 produced artworks, 3D sculptures of lighthouses and paintings based on the work and author and illustrator Sean Tan. These were displayed in the library windows and the foyer. Other artwork was also displayed in other businesses along Walkerville Terrace. And I'm pleased to advise everyone that the Walkerville Primary School won the Credit Union SA Sala School Awards commendation, and we were advised of this afternoon. So well done. And it was fantastic. I looked at quite a few of them. Right. Now, everyone's present. There are no apologies. Are there any leave of absence? Yes.
5th of October till about the 25th.
You going somewhere exciting?
Well, hopefully.
Going overseas.
Well done.
No.
I said I'd be excited when someone said yes. Confirmation. Oh, first of all, does anyone have any conflict of interest?
Yeah. I've declared one.
Thank you. Do you want to say what it is?
Sure. It's in relation to 16.3.6
Oh, I see. Yes.
and 19.3 regarding the Caravan Park. My house is adjacent to Levi Caravan Park, hence could have a perceived interest in both of those items. But I will stand around and participate in debate and vote on both matters.
Thank you.
In your worship, I'd like to declare an interest in item 16.3.7, being the CEO performance review, and it's a section 120 interest that I declare. I clearly won't be in the room, your worship.
Thank
when
you.
the matter's discussed.
Thank you. I've jumped the gun a bit. The minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 17th of August. Everyone has received a copy. Does anyone have any changes, or would someone be happy to move the adoption? Councillor Coleman, seconded Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. There are no deputations, representations or presentations, and there are no reports from elected members having attended training conferences or seminars. Mayor's Diary. The Mayor's Diary has been circulated. Are there any questions regarding the Mayor's Diary?
I'm assuming my presence has been removed.
Yes, it was.
Thank
Yes. No comments? Would someone move the adoption then, please?
Happy to.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. Really? Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Menke. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. There are no reports from elected members having attended subsidiary board meetings. Are there any questions from the gallery?
None were received by 5 p.m, Your Worship.
Thank you. Questions without notice? Councillor Bishop.
I have one, and it is to Ben Clark. He may well have seen a copy of it earlier today because I did submit it, but I will read it out. Would Ben Clark advise Council of the health of the dragon tree in Hawker Reserve? This 80-year-old plus tree is very sick. I think it is a significant tree and is on our registry of significant trees. Its partner died about 18 months ago and has been removed. And I'm wondering whether we need more help, perhaps from the Botanic Gardens, because it's actually, dragon trees are not trees.
Take my seat, Toby.
Thank you. So through Your Worship, just some background. So both the dragon blood trees have been monitored up until August 18 when the first one was removed, and we've continued to monitor the second one. So the last formal inspection was March 2019 by an arborist, in which case we did some looking at that, and as you mentioned, the foliage was pale, lacking lustre. It appeared that the root system appeared to have died and wasn't sourcing any nutrients. At that point, Council made contact with the Botanic Gardens and the Waite Institute and discussed the health of the tree and their experience and things like that. It was thought that there was potential that there was some sort of rot that was causing through the water and things like that. It turned out that that wasn't that, and between the three of us, we were unable to kind of identify what was causing the deterioration of the tree. We tried a few things that they recommended and nothing appeared to stop the decline. We took soil samples in April this year that was sent off to microbiology laboratories to do some soil testing. The soil condition was fair. They didn't highlight any particular issues. There was no current presence of a gas leak. There was concern about the soil anaerobes, which is basically the waterlogged and compaction. But again, it didn't appear that the soil itself was waterlogged, but appeared to be compacted because there's no formal irrigation on the tree or anything like that. The cause of the decline still remains unclear, but they suspect, and some of the aerial imagery and things shows that there might have been a gas leak in around 2015 in the street, that they think that may have been an underlying cause of the damage to the tree, which at this stage seems... Yeah, but the recommendation from the arborist is that once this one's removed, at which point at which it completely declines and it's removed, that we remediate the soil for about 12 months and then plant a suitable tree. And he has recommended that planting of dragon's blood trees could go back in there, that they don't think that there's an underlying issue with the location for the trees, but that there was some sort of incident that occurred causing the underlying damage.
Do they have an age, like they
300
die?
years. They're
Yeah.
A
ancient.
bit premature then?
Yeah.
Yeah, very premature. Prior to, I think it was about 16, the tree was damaged by vandals and they cut holes in the bark, but because they're not true trees, you can't ring bark them. So one would have thought that that would have been, it wouldn't have affected them. But they have been on the decline since then, so I don't know.
Yeah, so trees were, as I said, that sort of ties in with the gas leak, which they think was around 2015, which was repaired. And as I mentioned, the arborist seems to think that there was some sort of damage that caused through the soil and things like that, which obviously caused them both to decline quite quickly, with the western one, the eastern one, sorry, that declined obviously more quickly.
The
Western one
died
first, and then the eastern one's on its way out.
Yeah.
So unfortunately,
I
we were
documented,
trying, yeah.
and I have them on my phone. I documented them for ages, so I can see the dramatic decline.
And we can see it from the aerial imagery too as it slowly declines. As I said, we've reached out to the Botanic Gardens before and they couldn't provide us with any more information than what they thought initially, but
Thank you, Ben.
no worries.
Would have been nice.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, so am I.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No other questions without notice? Questions on notice? There are none. There are no petitions. Motions without notice. Does any member have any motion with notice? Sorry. Yes, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Fricker. I have one that I've already sent through to Vanessa that had a couple of iterations, and it's basically around the presentation we had last Tuesday, I think it was? Last Tuesday. I'll just read it out. The one that I'm settled on was that administration right to and lobby DIT and state government to support the inclusion of co-housing as part of its planning framework agenda. Just after, essentially after the meeting that we had, as you mentioned earlier, the presentation we had was fantastic, and just a bit of blue sky thinking for the possibilities for people's yards if co-housing is included in the new planning reform. It gives people lots of opportunities. It also gives, I believe, it gives council and lots of councils opportunities as well of saving some of their contributory item houses that are around. By default, it gives them that opportunity to survive because the property can be financially viable if some of the suggestions are able to occur through the new planning system. So
He did say that, the presenter did say that they'd put something into the planning.
Yeah.
So this is really just as a way of support.
Exactly. Just to make sure that it's not lost. We have the presentation and that's done. Just to make sure.
Well, he's presenting at our meeting of era mayors.
Yeah.
So we can probably see if they can have another letter of support.
Yeah, which would be great. Because once this happens, of course, it then goes through a process. It goes through quite a lengthy process. Hopefully, we may even get an opportunity to comment at some stage. It would be nice. It would be nice if we did, because it certainly opens up a lot of opportunities for all sorts of people within the community, but in particular, people as they get older, if they're asset rich and cash poor, they present with an opportunity to stay in their own houses by downscaling and getting some income out of the property that they have. So, I thought it was excellent. I just didn't want it to get lost. That's the reason for the motion. So I'd like to.
May I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Phelan. Does anyone wish to ask any questions or speak to the motion? You're all happy if I put the motion? All those in favour? Thank you. Carried.
Thanks.
There are no motions with notice, and so I move on to 14, reports requiring decision of council, which is 14.1 strategy, 14.1.1 the draft 2020-2024 disability access and inclusion plan, which has been circulated for everyone to read. If you have any questions, please ask. Councillor Bishop.
I was just going to comment that I hope that we are sending it out to those in our community that we know are interested in disability, like our aged care facilities and that sort of thing, that it's just not an ad in the paper saying read this. Thank you, Fiona.
That was just a note. No,
Would you like to just
through the chair, we will be going out to all of our key stakeholders, which will include LT, ECH Day program on Walkerville Terrace, the College Grove ECH as well, Adelaide Clinic, GPs, which we only have one in the area. So that will go there. Schools, United Churches, and I also thought I would send it to the sporting groups as well, because I think it's appropriate that they comment on it too.
Might I suggest physios?
Certainly.
Because they will see people with disabilities.
Yes.
We have a couple in town.
Yes.
Rose?
Pardon?
I just didn't know whether you include chiros with that as well.
You could probably, possibly, yes.
I don't
Their
know
health
that
allied health.
chiropractors see, but physios definitely do. But yeah, why not?
Why not?
They're
Why
allied
not?
health professionals.
Thank
Any other questions? Anyone wishes? No comment? If not, would someone move the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. May I have a seconder? Councillor Joshi. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. 14.2 Policy 14.2.1 Review of the Audit Committee's Terms of Reference. Does anyone have any questions regarding the review?
Yes, Mayor Freeman.
Yes, Councillor Wilkins.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not used, still not used to looking this way. Go on.
That's all right. My question is just in regards to clause 6 meetings, where we will meet at least once each quarter financial year. Does that include a force majeure clause within the legislation that brought in? Just in reference to COVID, obviously it was hard for us to meet during that period. So if it happens again, we potentially could not meet. I guess there is specific powers that can be brought in so we can meet virtually. But it was just a reference to, I guess we've just experienced what we probably wouldn't have ever thought of before.
Through your worship,
Yes.
and then Vanessa, the Act, irrespective of COVID, the Act actually does allow committees to meet virtually, so you
Okay.
can have that capacity. I think it's likely that all that legislation that we've seen is probably going to be embedded in some form, whether it's been by directive or codes or something like that. With regards to committees, they've always had the opportunity, the luxury of being able to meet through teleconferencing.
Yep.
So that process is quite new for councils, and that's been introduced as a result of COVID.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you want to add?
No, thank you.
Any other question? Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Mayor Frigga. Yes, too, within the terms of reference, this is probably just a numbering issue. There is no 5.7, so it goes from 5.6 to 5.8. And also, I read this other part about 3 times. I don't know whether I'm missing something or not. I don't think I am. 5.14 says if a vacancy occurs on the committee, the council will appoint a replacement member to the committee via the process detailed at clauses 4.3 and 4.7. There's no 4.3 or 4.7 in the terms of reference.
It's numbering.
So I was just trying to work out which part or which numbers, I was assuming that it was going to be in the membership that 5.14 was referring to.
It's 5.6.
5.3.
And Your Worship, please accept our apology. This is a new template, and we've been transitioning our existing documents into the new template, and we've clearly erred.
No, I read the
in
words, I
doing
didn't
that.
look at the numbering, I'm sorry, I should have picked it up, but
The new template's a lot better.
it does.
Except for the
Yes.
It's definitely a lot
mistakes.
better than the obviously.
It looks very professional.
No, but thank you for that. So we will, Your Worship, part of the recommendation certainly allows administration, if it gets through tonight, to make any changes of a technical and format. So we will clearly go through that in greater detail, make sure that the numbering is aligned to the content of the provisions.
No worries, thank you.
Any other comment? If not, would someone move the adoption?
Moved.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. Councillor Williams? All those in favour? Thank you, carried. We now move to 14.2.2, review of the request for service and general complaint handling policy. Are there any questions regarding the policy? No? If
Happy to
not,
move.
thank you, Councillor Williams.
Sorry,
Councillor
second.
Wilkins, seconded. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. Move on to 14.2.3, which is the procurement policy review. Are there any questions regarding
Your
this?
Worship, sorry, have you missed 14.2. Oh, I've got a double 14.2, 14.2.2. The customer complaints policy. Oh, no?
No, I've got procurement policy review.
Through your worship, that was the request for service and general complaint handling
Sorry,
policies.
Oh,
It's
sorry, I'm
correct
just
now.
working off of my benchmarking. Sorry, my
Review.
tabs, my contents. My apologies, Your Worship.
We're all right. We're doing the review of the request for service and general complaint. Yes. No, we've done that.
You've done
Now
that,
we're going
yeah.
to procurement
That's my
policy
error.
review. Yeah. Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Fricker. I'm just wondering, a question to the CEO, I guess, we're reviewing this policy 6 months earlier than we need to, and I know it may be around the credit cards, but 6 months earlier than we need to because it's due, so the next time it would be due, it would go 2 years from today, is the 21st of September 2022. Now, I was just thinking, seeing that's around election time, whether we can make adjustments to the policy at that time, or whether that's partly why it's been brought forward. Because if we approve this now, it means we will have to again before the end of this term. And I was just wondering whether it's better off not doing it until the next term. Otherwise, we're going to have to do it twice in this term. If you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah, absolutely, through Your Worship. And the reason it's come back into the chamber is because it's been through the audit committee as a result of internal review, part of our internal controls, and the internal auditors picked up and suggested that credit cards needed to be factored into our procurement. They were indicated, they recommended that we have a policy, a standalone policy on credit cards. My view was that it didn't need to be a standalone document because we have a procedure, internal procedure that deals with credit cards. And as the discussion occurred at the audit committee, it was resolved that essentially if it was picked up into the procurement policy, that would be a good location for it, hence why it's come forward. The fact that it does identify September 22, we, administration, can delay it until the 22 council elections are done. And as you know, there have been policies that don't always make the deadline. So either we can adjust it to allow that it goes, that this council resolves that it is not to be reviewed before that, or we just leave it as it is, knowing full well that we wouldn't be bringing in a procurement policy at or about the same time that the general elections are coming forward. My preference is to leave the date where it is because it doesn't prevent or it does not prevent administration from bringing it back into the chamber should we have a requirement to do so. I mean, something might happen, something might change. The audit committee might pick up something else that it wants to identify and resolve, and I'd be loath to leave that for an extra 2 years plus before it can get reviewed again. So I think leaving it as it is, recognising that there are a number of other factors that may drive the procurement policy from coming back into council for consideration.
Well, thank you for the explanation. I was aware it was probably around the credit cards, and naturally that doesn't, as you mentioned, that doesn't stop you from bringing it in back in 18 months' time if there's a particular purpose or reason for doing that. So thanks for the explanation.
There is, sorry, Mayor Fricker.
Yes, Councillor.
There's just, I'm not sure if it's just due to the PDFing, but the formatting in 8.1, just the bullet points gone a bit crazy. It's not quite aligned. Could be just due to the PDF.
Formatting, yeah. Thank you, Councillor.
I was reading it going, why am I
What's that
getting a
here?
bit tired? It's just,
Mine printed out fine.
it must be the PDFing.
Yeah.
If you're happy with something, then move the adoption of the report. Thank you, Councillor Fowler, seconded Councillor Wilkins. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. We now move to 14.3.1, the election of the LGA President. The information regarding the nominations received for the LGA President has been circulated. Does anyone wish to make any comment? Does anyone have a preferred candidate? Councillor Bishop.
Having discussed it with a number of people, I would like to put the Mayor of Adelaide Hills, Councillor Jane Claire Wisdom, up.
Is there a seconder for that nomination? Councillor Coleman, thank you. Does anyone wish to speak to the recommendation? Yes, Councillor Reid.
If I could just ask a question, I was actually going to ask your thoughts, Mayor, because you're probably most likely to know these candidates better than the majority of council. So I was interested to know your opinion, but also to know
I would support Councillor Bishop's nomination.
Okay, no worries at all.
Anyone wish to make any further comment?
Very difficult when you don't know the individuals
Yes,
involved.
I understand that. And I've been in your position before.
I'm reading it, but I thought that Mayor Redmond read quite well and had probably a bit more representative of both rural and urban environment, but I'm guided by you, Your Worship, because I don't know the people at all.
Can I comment on that?
You may.
The Adelaide Hills Council, I know well, because my family are heavily based in the Adelaide Hills, actually goes right down into Burnside and into Ross Trevor, so that they do have strong representation, well not strong, but they do have some city dwellers in that area. It takes in that very rich area of the Adelaide Hills, all the vineyards and that.
And it was in
And my mother was a mayor of that area once too, so so was my grandfather.
She was on television a lot the mayor was on television a lot during just after the bushfires. You would have seen her on television. But I mean, the three candidates are very good. All of them are very good mayors and would represent South Australia well. Because it's particularly at the moment with all the changes, it's quite a very important position. We want it to be someone who's collaborative and gets on with the job. So there is a nomination there. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move on to 14.3.2, the election of Greater Adelaide Regional Organisations of Council, GAROC representative. There is a motion on the books that has been drafted by administration, which includes me as a nominee plus another. But you don't have to agree to putting me forward. I won't be offended. I've got a thick skin on that. But we have to have a second person. Councillor Bishop.
Can I go on this one again? Because I do know a number of people on there, and I would actually like to put up David O'Loughlin, whom I know well, like and admire his ability in local government. And he has been really impressive, I think, on his being head of waste management or head of the councils. I've seen him on wasn't he on TV?
He's actually president of ALGA, which is the Australian Local Government Association,
as well,
which is why he gets on Q&A and waste and yes.
I think he's very impressive.
I'd be happy to second Your Worship and David O'Loughlin.
Thank you. Councillor Ashby? Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, look, I also agree with Mel. I think David O'Loughlin does a great job, and I've seen quite a bit of him and I'm quite impressed with him. But personally, also know Anna Liam Bruno as well from Campbelltown. And I'm actually quite impressed that she's put her hand up for this, being Deputy Mayor as well. She's, and I suppose the strength that I'm looking at and targeting in on her is probably the impact from urban infill at Campbelltown and what she may have to offer with regards to her views on such density. So I'm not sure of any other council been hit like Campbelltown has, and I know they're very, very passionate about urban infill. So I'd like to put her name up for a bit of protection on, especially she's also worked on the old DAP, the CAP. So she's got that background as well. So just something for other people to think about.
Well, we have a nomination of that first of all we have, it's been moved and seconded by Councillor Bishop and Councillor Ashby, the motion that's there. Do you wish to amend the motion?
Yes, if I could, that'd be great.
Right.
Sorry, I completely missed that.
Include three.
Well, what would your amendment be? And then we'll. How do you wish to word it?
We can only nominate two,
We can, yeah.
Look, I'd like a bit of protection for the Walkerville and a bit of a voice for Walkerville too, so we'd obviously put your name up as well, Mayor Fricker, but also if I could nominate Annalene Bruno purely because I am, I think the planning reform's quite big at the moment. I'd really like to see someone with a bit of hands-on experience about the way they've suffered over there. You know, we're very passionate in that council area. But as Councillor Ashby did comment before, realistically, I don't think many people on this table know pretty much anybody, so it's really, you know.
Knowing Michael Hewitson, I know that, sorry, he's quite a good operator, but
Sorry, I missed what you just said. I was just watching it there. About Councillor Michael Hewitson. About Mayor Hewitson.
yeah, Mayor Hewitson, I know reasonably well, and know his son a lot better, but yeah, he's quite a good operator really, but not really strongly in this.
We're having a dispute on whether this is an amendment.
Just put a hand on and vote for
You happy to treat it as an amendment? Right, we're going to put the amendment.
Just to give clarity on that, I thought we were adding the third name.
No.
Oh, sorry.
So this is an amendment. If you need to vote on the amendment, if that then becomes the motion. So then it would be myself being nominated and Deputy Mayor Anna Lembruno instead of Mayor David O'Loughlin. First of all, may I have a seconder for Councillor Wilkins?
Can we talk to the amendment?
You may.
I'd like to support Councillor Bishop's motion of Dave of Mayor O'Loughlin being the second candidate to represent Garrett. I've had a number of dealings with him over a period of time. He's a very impressive bloke and always been extremely professional. He's presented to council in this area previously and also has been through a massive change in development in the Prospect area over a long period of time as well. So I won't be supporting the amendment. I'll be supporting Councillor Bishop's motion and Councillor Ashby's second.
Is there does anyone wish to speak for the amendment?
Yeah,
Councillor
thank you. After listening to Councillor Nenke, I'd like to support Anna Liam Bruno. I think for two reasons. One, I think we're already aligned with that council in service provisions, and I know the challenges that they've had around planning development, and they've had some positive outcomes with that, and I think given that she's had some involvement in that, I think that's a good thing moving forward with the current planning amendments, because I think there are significant concerns around that, and I think Councillor there has worked well to address that. So, I'd like to support the amendment from that perspective.
Is there a speaker against the amendment? No? Do you wish to speak to the motion?
I've said everything. That's fine. Thanks.
Do you wish to do a ballot, or do you want to do a written ballot, or would you prefer to do it as a show of hands?
Show of hands. I was wondering, would everybody support Mayor Fricker? Are we just coming down to the last two, and do we just put a show of hands for the last two? Would that be the better way to do it, or?
Well, it's just as easy to
Just show of hands.
Just put the amendment. because those
Are you
votes...
happy just to put the amendment?
Right,
True.
right,
Yeah, if it's
so
only in the last 2
Yeah,
years.
it's
correct.
voting.
So I'll put the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment?
This is the mayor and the deputy mayor at Campbelltown.
Of Campbelltown. All those against?
Yes,
I'm in
councillor.
favour of one, but I'm just neutral with the other
No,
two because
well,
I don't know.
We have to, I understand. Thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. That's lovely. It's whether it's the amendment, it's the same. I'm in both
Yes.
and it's the different one. So I'll just put it again. Those in favour of the amendment, which is Deputy Anna. Thank you. All those in favour? Councillor Ninky, 3, 4. All those against? It's a tie vote.
So
have to
I'm
amend
neutral,
it.
so I've got two sides.
No, you can't do that. You can't do that.
That's the
You have to.
Governance officer.
Through your worship, I'd recommend that we do a ballot for the second position, and then you can.
Well, it's unlikely the votes are going to change.
So,
Well, it's strange. I've never seen this before. It's
No.
unusual because we certainly wouldn't have anticipated that the mayor may have a
right.
conflict or have to vote at all.
We'll just
So-
better check for the governance officer. She can look in her little book and see if there's anything there that can assist us.
do we change it all and only and take you out of it? And
I think
Can't really
yeah,
do
I think
that.
that's the issue. That's what's causing the council secretariat some anxiety. Is that we're trying to avoid a conflict of interest for the mayor, and notwithstanding that council has nominated her and the council's also putting her name forward. So we're trying to avoid her having to basically vote for herself. So if we could, in essence, separate that out,
Have
that
a
would be
motion
useful.
to say for me
For you first,
one,
and then
a
a
motion
separate
for the
one.
second person.
Well, the issue is it's already been put.
Well, because it's a tie vote, we have to do it differently.
Yeah, but because
Through your worship, we could call a division.
but it's 4 and 4.
It's 4 and
Council
4.
and
Secretariat.
4.
Yes.
This is all fun.
Council Secretariat and your worship, I'd like to suggest that if council's comfortable with this, notwithstanding we've had a motion, we've had an amendment to the motion, if we were to separate out and deal with set aside, Council Secretariat, if we set aside what's been presented and the mover and the seconder of the amendment and the mover and the seconder of the original motion and separate them out. So one motion is that Mayor Elizabeth Fricker is nominated, we vote on that. And then the second one is either one or the other, whether it's Mayor David O'Loughlin or Deputy Mayor Anna. Thank you. It takes me a while to. How does that sound, Your Worship?
I think that makes sense, yes.
Council Secretary, are we able to set aside?
Yes,
Is that acceptable?
that is acceptable.
So sorry, it's setting aside.
Which
two
means we're
motions,
not
the
dealing
amendment.
with the amendment and the motion at the moment. We're going to separate them out. So there's going to be a motion that just puts forward the worship. You vote on that. And then there's a motion that deals with
the mayor
Deputy Mayor
Anna.
thank you. I'm going to say Deputy Mayor from Campbelltown. That's going to make it easier for me because I just haven't got my pronunciation. And because that was the most recent amendment, and then how if that gets through, fantastic. If it doesn't get through, then we move on to Mayor David O'Loughlin.
So with the two separated, the mayor can then vote.
Correct.
Why have you? I don't think you want
That's
to.
correct.
Yes.
Because otherwise we'll still end up
This
with
isn't
four.
separated.
That's right.
Probably with four.
But see, now that once you've separated out,
Two.
the mayor can do a casting vote.
Either that or Stephen's in the toilet for 15 minutes.
Oh, that's a bit naughty.
Well, no, we've got to get.
Shut
It'll
the
take a
door.
while to get this right.
Shut the door.
It's unbelievable. No, you have to wait for him to come back. So.
Is everyone ready for me?
Yes.
Get in and out.
Thank you.
Get in and out. And, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh no, the motion for the mayor to be accepted, we'll vote on that first, and then we'll vote on James' amendment, which is for...
Yeah, so we're dealing with yours first, your worship.
Do we have to
We
vote?
have to vote
Yes,
for the
so
amendment.
through your worship, what we're going to do is we're going to deal with the first motion being that council instructs the presiding member to mark the ballot paper with an X next to the name of Mayor Elizabeth Fricker for election to the East Regional Grouping of Members of Garrick. So we're going to deal with that motion. Then we're going to deal with the motion that council instructs the presiding member to mark the ballot paper with an X next to the name of Deputy Mayor Anna Leon-Bruno for election to the East Regional Grouping Members of Garrick. And that way, if her worship needs to use her casting vote, she's at liberty to do so without putting herself in a compromising position.
She declared a conflict on the first motion.
She's not voting.
So
Unless she has to cast a vote.
Goes forward.
Well, we'll see
just
how
another
that
thing
goes.
on that, though, if that's the case, is the Deputy Mayor of Campbelltown being put, is that still an amendment, or is that the
It's a
motion?
fresh motion.
So if that's a fresh motion, if someone wants something different, they need to put something different up to the fresh
That would be a
motion
new
as an
motion.
amendment.
That'll be a new motion, not
which
an
is
amendment.
An amendment.
It won't, through your worship, it'll be a fresh motion, not an amendment. It won't be an amendment
Okay, yeah.
because it's a completely different person.
Yeah.
The reason the last one was an amendment was because 50% of the motion
We're still the same.
was still the same.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to work
Yeah,
through the process prior to
yeah.
rather than...
Yeah. And the reason the reason I recommended we go with the amendment, Councillor, I'm going to try, I'll have to see her name to pronounce it.
Sorry,
Leon
Bruno.
Bruno, and I apologise if she's listening to tonight's meeting. The reason we're going with that one first, because that was the amendment. That was the most recent one, and if it wasn't for the casting vote, that would have been the one that we would have dealt with first.
Yeah.
So that's why I
Right.
recommend we do with that one
Someone
first.
move that the council instructs the presiding member to mark the ballot paper with an X next to the name of Mayor Elizabeth Fricker for election to the East Regional Grouping of Members of Garrick. Thank you, Councillor Bishop. May I have a seconder? Councillor Joshi. I'll therefore put it to the motion. Put the motion to the vote, rather. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move to the next motion, and that's that the council instructs the presiding member to mark the ballot paper with an X next to the name of Deputy Mayor Anna Leon-Bruno for election to the East Regional Grouping of Members of Garrick. May I have someone move? Thank you, Councillor Nenke, and Councillor Wilkins seconded. I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? This is to vote for the deputy mayor, not for David O'Loughlin, Mayor O'Loughlin. And then if it doesn't get up, then it would become, someone could move a new motion nominating David O'Loughlin.
Right.
So all those in favour of the current motion that's on the table? All those against? It's lost. Does someone wish to move a new motion? Councillor Bishop?
Yes, I would like to move a motion that the presiding member mark the ballot paper with an X next to the name of Deputy Mayor David O'Loughlin.
No, Mayor. He's Mayor.
I'm Mayor, thank you. I'm reading up there. Love that. Brain and mouth are not coordinated. That's probably the case. To Mayor David O'Loughlin for election to the, and is he Eastern Region?
Yes,
Yeah.
East Regional Grouping of Members of Garrop.
No, I second that.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Councillor Ashby seconded. So I'll put it to the motion now. All those in favour of the current motion? Carried. Thank you. Unanimous.
Can I just say that within my 2 terms of council, well, not here, Campbelltown as well, that I've never seen a more rigorous debate about a Garrop moving forward.
And I tell you what, it came as a bit of a surprise to me.
And it certainly tested our governance.
Yes. Right, moving on. 14.3.3, the election of positions of representative members of the LGFA Board of Trustees. I do apologise to the Board of Trustees, I'm not trying to laugh, it's just after the last one. And everyone's read the papers. Does anyone have anyone that they wish to nominate?
Yeah, Madam Speaker.
Yes, Councillor Walker.
Reading through the CVs supplied, I'd like to nominate Annette Martin and Michael Sechin. Annette Martin.
And I will happily second that because I too read through their CVs and this morning had told the CEO and our Mayor that they were the ones that I felt and should be nominated. And I also like the fact that one is city and one is country. So we get a broad
Cross
Both significant experience and
Yes.
representation.
Does anyone wish to speak against the motion, since we've had 2 speak for? No. Is everyone happy that I put it to the vote? All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. I'll move on to 14.3.4, Resilient East 2019-2020 Annual Report.
And apologies here, Your Worship. That was an information-only report, but it made its way into the decision part of the agenda.
Never mind. The motion is to receive and note the report. Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. May I have a seconder? Councillor Joshi. Does anyone wish to comment on the report? Quite interesting. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Frida. I've actually sent through an addition earlier today to the motion of the recommendation that Vanessa's put up there. And the addition to the recommendation that's there, that Council receives and notes the Resilient East 2019-2020 Annual Report appearing as attachment A to this report is that, and notes that to meet tree canopy targets, Council needs to consider methods of extra tree planting, including on private land, current road space and any newly created protrusions, and consider median strips and the tree planting within them where roads that allow this due to their width are resurfaced or reconstructed. Now, I know there has been mention of that before, that we're going to have to look for, to reach our targets in the urban forest strategy, that we're going to need to find other areas to include planting. That may include, and we've discussed this before, the possibility of some incentives for people to plant within their own properties. But to reach those targets, we're going to have to look seriously almost at creating some more space or more plantable space than the last reports have shown. I think it was 8% that we've got, and we're going to need 25% over the next 25 years or something. So that will also, no doubt, if we're having to look at in those areas, that will also no doubt come at a cost to council as well. So we'll have to also consider budgeting for that going forward, because the heat mapping reports that we've seen previously just really show us what's going to happen if we continue along the path we're going. So that's the only reason I want to get back.
Can we go back to that amendment, please? Thank you. So the addition, are you happy, Councillor Wilkins?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And Councillor Joshi, are you happy with the inclusion of that addition?
Yes.
Are there any other comments? Anyone wish to speak to the motion or speak against the motion? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Now move to 14.3.5, the Small Business Friendly Council Initiative. We've read the report and it's resolving for us to join
Comment?
the initiative and commit to the charter.
Comment?
Yes, Councillor Ashby, I'm just about to
yeah,
ask.
I mean, I'm very much in favour of small business and support thereof, but I just think we're getting a proliferation of organisations, which this one doesn't, on the surface, look as it's going to cost any money, but it's still got to be serviced. And it just seems to me that it's doing a job that local government can do. Not local government, I mean state governments and things ought to be doing anyway. I just doubt the benefit of council being involved. I don't really oppose it, but I just think we need to consider how many of these sort of organisations that we become involved in that really are not our core business in actual fact. So that's just my
Do
thoughts.
either of you wish to respond?
Would you have a go at answering that? Please step up here and then I'll fill in the gaps if they need to be filled in.
Through you, Worship. In terms of small business, we're part of Propel SA and also the Era Economic Development Group. We don't as such have any overarching relationships with the Small Business Commissioner. This is one of his projects that he's taken on. We would be the last Era Council to join, and I think that's beneficial, particularly I sit on the boards of Propel SA and Era Economic Development Board, and this has come up there quite a few times, and how they're using those groups as part of this, because there's extra networking information for me who sits on those boards, which I think is beneficial considering we're looking at things like the Shop Local campaign, which was started in COVID, and we now have as well a new database which has all of our small businesses, local businesses registered through Walkerville, which we can reach out to now as well. That was launched last week. So I think it would be beneficial.
And I think, Your Worship, if I could come in from the sidelines, the issue here, Councillor, is that it's not an extra parcel of work per se. So it's a small business commission trying to promote small businesses, and if Walkerville was to support this, it would be utilising our networks and our website to do just that as well. There is some reporting, you're correct in terms of that, so we would be required to abide by the charter and the elements listed in the charter. We believe that we would be able to comfortably accommodate that within our existing staffing resources and at minimal, if no cost to council and certainly from administration's point of view. So this is something that we would encourage council to support. It's an avenue in an area that we've been looking at for a reasonable period of time. We don't have the capacity and the resources to do work for small businesses by ourselves, and anything that requires a collaboration or a network just adds benefit or adds value to our ability to get out there and do stuff for the small business community. Thank you, Worship.
I probably agree with you, but I just think we just keep getting a proliferation of such, or it doesn't matter whether it's in like small business or various industry groups, and we end up talking around in circles most of the time.
Yeah.
But I've been on a few and I know what they're like.
Councillor Williams?
Yeah, but I'm happy with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Frickett. There's been a number of things over a period of time that Council's done. There's a number of things that Council's already doing in regards to, I guess, the 5 initiatives. I think we'd spoken about this a while ago, or I may have to the CEO, about the point 2 is about the business advisory group. I know during the last council there was a meeting of businesses and importantly as well, property owners as well as business owners, particularly along Walkerville Terrace. And one of the things that comes up to me quite regularly with business owners along there is getting the mix on the terrace right, not having too much of the same thing on the terrace and having a variety. Now I know once again probably 2
possibly 3 councils ago, there was we did a lot of work on the mix of properties there, including looking at some wine bar type things at one stage as well, and gourmet foods to try and get a bigger mix in the area. That's something for other business owners that's come up to me quite regularly that they're concerned about. I'm just wondering whether there's an opportunity, and I support this as well, but I'm just wondering whether it's time that we have another one of those business advisory group meetings just to see the lay of the land, because things have changed considerably in the tenants that are on Walkerville Terrace at the moment. There's a new Italian restaurant doing, or looking to do very well. It's always full next to G's Louise. There's new tenancies about to go into the Woolworths centre as well. I know there's quite a change around there. And given probably the people, there would probably only be 50% of the people that were at that meeting, which may be possibly 4 years ago, somewhere like that. There were actually quite possibly less than half the people that are still in business along the strip. So perhaps...
I was actually been thinking about it, thinking we must think about it in the new year.
Yeah, so perhaps it's time. I know, obviously, the last 6 months.
Yes.
Your worship, if I
Yes, CEO.
come in again from the sidelines. One of the issues that we have, we want to be cautious about how we engage with the business community at this point in time, and that's clearly been driven because of COVID restrictions and a whole lot of other things. So Her Worship is quite correct. The thinking that we have in administration is that we want to survey the business community. Sarah's been doing sensational work in terms of building relationships with the business community. We're trying to build a current database that's going to require us to consistently maintain that and keep in touch with who's on the terrace, as well as North-East Road and some of the businesses along Maynooth Road and Road Terrace, of course. Let alone the other pockets of businesses that we know of, like the caterers in Lansdowne and some other businesses around as well. We think that surveying them with some very specific target issues is going to give us more intel than just having a meeting and saying, what do you want us to do? Because people come to meetings and they want direction, they want leadership. So before we launch or call people together as part of what was the Mayor's forums, business forums, we want to have some background knowledge and information so that we have a sense of what the business community is prepared to contribute towards. And I don't mean financially contribute, I mean resource, time, etc. One of the conversations that's been around this table for many a year and has come back at the table is the notion of having a long street lunch or a street fair or a market, something like that, before we start launching or thinking about that, because closing streets is always very tricky and we know that. We want to get a sense of what is it that the community, the business community, is prepared to contribute to. And are they interested? They might say, thanks, council, but butt out. Exactly right.
The landlords are very, very important to that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, getting the mix and making the terrace successful, they're very, very important, because at the end of the day, they can choose who goes into their shops and see the bigger picture, or choose to just put whoever's there at the point in time. So they're a very important ingredient.
Yeah.
Are you happy then to move? Sorry, Councillor.
So just a question though, just on that, and I support everything that Councillor Williams is saying. Just, I mean, how do you get around the current environment where you have 3 pizza places within, 20 metres, like not a triangle there? So does that come back to the landlord, or I mean, how do we communicate what's coming up, or I mean, are we allowed to do that? I mean, is it?
It's the landlord.
Your Worship, I suppose the question is, and the debate is, do you want to restrict business?
We can't.
I mean, that's the question. I mean, competition is one thing, and what we do know is if you start food, if food restaurants or restaurants food come to the terrace, more are going to follow. It's like coffee shops. We wouldn't consider restricting the number of coffee shops that we have, and there's about 8 of them around the township in very close proximity to each other. So I don't think it's the space for council to restrict the type of businesses that come into the township, but it is council's business to ensure that it makes it easy for businesses to come into the township, so that we review our policies and our procedures and we make sure that red tape is removed, and that we make ourselves available so that we can listen to what their concerns are. And we work with the business community to better understand what will drive foot traffic or drive increased activity for their businesses in that regard. So I think for us it's really having a better understanding and appreciation of what the role of council is, and perhaps who better to tell us what that role of council is other than the businesses. I mean, it really is the businesses, I would have thought, because we'll probably get it wrong, to be perfectly honest.
Well, it wasn't really a question, I was just,
A comment.
Yeah,
My apologies.
It's hard to get around that, so.
Yeah.
Are you happy to move?
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Can I have a second
knowing
then?
that it will, at some stage.
Councillor Joshi? Look at it, New Year. If there's no further discussion, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Moving on to 14.3.6, the appointment of independent members to the Audit Committee. The paper has been circulated. Are there any questions regarding talking about the independent members and the tenure? Yes, Councillor Williams.
I'd be happy to move the recommendation if after the bracket 3 the word year was 3 years was put. 3-year term.
3 years term.
Yeah, a 3-year term. Other than that slight change, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. May I have a seconder? Councillor Joshi. If no one wishes to speak, shall I put the vote? All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move to 14.3.7. The radio frequency identification on mobile garbage bins. The recommendation and accompanying papers have been circulated. Are there any questions regarding the...
Why don't we go for a phased introduction of over a period of years? I know there are budgetary considerations, but if we're fair dinkum about waste, which I think this council is, it seems to me that at $1.55 a bin, we probably ought to work on a 5-7 year introductory period for the whole of our bin system.
Yes, Councillor Bishop, and then Councillor Joshi. Councillor Bishop.
I read this and I'm in absolute support of what Councillor Ashby is putting forward. In fact, I have put that in my notes, that I think that we do a phased introduction through, first of all, Gilberton, and I'll explain why I think Gilberton, to begin with, is that Mayor Fricker and I went out to East West to discuss the issues that we have with waste in our council area, and the big issue is food waste in being that which is in the green bin, which should be in the green bin, is actually in the blue lidded bin. And we could save ourselves $60,000 a year if we got that right. And the suburb that is probably the biggest issue is Gilberton. So with putting the wrong things in the wrong bin. So I thought we should start with Gilberton. But reading this further, we actually don't own the green bins. And so we have a problem here in this recommendation. The green bins are actually owned by the household. The council does not supply green bins, only yellow and blue bins. So this whole motion needs a great deal more thought before we can actually vote on it. Silence? So we can't take something we don't own.
Your Worship, Councillor Bishop makes a very valid point, and it was one that administration overlooked when it was presented here. Well, I say overlooked, but my understanding, and I will call on the group manager, Assets and Infrastructure, to speak to the item, that it was debated and discussed at the Waste Advisory Group. I'm looking at the chairman to see if that was in fact the case with some other members of the committee, and I'm not sure to what extent the idea of having the RFID was to also be included on the green organics.
Yeah.
Or if I can, it's perhaps a little bit cart before the horse in a way, in that the green bins, there was another process we were going to go through. I believe that once we've done the audit, that council would then be considering whether or not it was prepared to subsidise or do something around the green bins, at which point in time I believe if we were going to subsidise or contribute it all towards those bins, that we would then have the ability to tag those. So, but I think Councillor Josh, you'll say something to say. I think
I was going to say the similar thing, that because we were trying to find out, because I think in the next item is there about us trying to find out how many bins we have first, and then use it to tag them, or then you want to know the benefit of, how many households really want to avail of those. So I was thinking this is kind of linked to that. If you guys don't know how many are there, how much are township owned, like how many people really own a green bin and how many can actually, Councillor Bishop was saying, people don't use it because they don't have one.
Yeah.
So then where does the whole thing go about educating them when they own one?
Your Worship, I'm wondering, picking up on the very valid point that Councillor Bishop made, if administration's recommendation was in fact to remove including green organics from the recommendation, and we deal with the RFID on those bins which are the assets of council. So we're talking about our recycling bins and we're talking about our residual bins. And
that would mean if we did look at, if down the track we did provide green bins, then we could put them on those too.
And what I was going to suggest was that once we get better informed about where we are with the green bins, because the next item talks about surveying and collecting that data. So once we have a better understanding of where we are, we can always bring that matter back into the chamber with a series of options that address the issue of the green organics. So if council's comfortable with that approach, but Councillor Ashby's indicated a desire to separate it out or to extend it or stage it over 1 or 2 years. So potentially, Councillor Ashby, you may want to further tweak the recommendation before council if that's what you're interested in.
Yes, got me on the green bin that we did. I suppose at the end of the day, if we're fair dinkum about it, we ought to be saying to our community that we're going to electronically identify bins and we will be making the change and there will be a charge. I think I get a feeling throughout the community there is a real desire to get on top of this. I suppose there's one reservation about it, being able to identify them. In actual fact, the drivers are still not going to be able to identify what's in that bin as they load it because they have one snapshot of the camera. All the contaminants in the bottom, they're not going to know anyway. So you sort of wonder, is bin identification as beneficial as everything? And I'm throwing more queries in than I'm solving problems, I'm sure.
It must be it must have been proven. Our discussion with Rob the other day, we went out because the Deputy Mayor and I had actually specific queries on our own rubbish, on what you put in what and how we can raise that. But anyway, and we got into this and his comment was it is proven worthwhile.
It isn't proven.
It has been proven.
It's proven to be,
yes.
Fair enough.
So I didn't ask the question directly as you put it, but it was,
Your Worship, Councillor
Yes,
Wilkins.
Councillor Wilkins.
Thanks, Mr. Look, my only concern is around us weighing and identifying in certain households about the amount of waste they put out, is what kind of behaviour that could potentially drive.
So people could potentially start storing garbage at the back of their properties rather than putting it out, particularly if we get to the point where we say, no, we're going to charge you by the tonne you actually put out rather than as a basis it is now under our rates mechanism. So that will be, I would say, a concern for some people. I'm not saying all people, but I do like the idea of what we're trying to achieve. My concern is what kind of behaviour does it potentially drive.
Councillor Joshi, and then Councillor Williams, and then Councillor Bishop.
Okay. I just had the question, was this RFID tags that we're planning to put, is it for all the 3 types of bins? Is it for the recycling one as well, and the green organics?
Through your worship, that's essentially what this recommendation is presenting to council, is that on all new and replacement bin lids, including green organics. So it's saying including green organics. I'm suggesting that administration amends its recommendation to remove green organics because we do not own them, and we only focus on the recycling one and the residual waste one. So the blue lids and the yellow lids.
So has this been tried in any other council where they found it to be really good and successful?
Yes, it says it in
it's been said on here as well. So I'm kind of pro for it, because I think you'll always have people who want to do it and you'll always have people who don't want to. So I think people will just follow on if there is a consequence to what's been, what's really assertive. So I think I kind of support it, but
Councillor.
Well, sort of a follow on from what Councillor Joshi's just said, we had an example of a bin from, I think, the Morford Vale area showing up to be put out in the Gawler region. So it was being put out, the bin had obviously been stolen and was being used and put out in a completely different end of Adelaide. So that's one of the other issues. But certainly, and I agree with Councillor Bishop and also the comments of the CEO around removing the including green bin bit. But I had a couple of other queries about what information do we have around the tampering of the RFID on the bins and the antenna, because obviously if there's going to be an expense for council in trying to roll this out over a period of time, if there's been experience of tampering with the RFIDs and we spend a lot of money and end up finding out that it's been a waste of time because people have been destroying them. I'm also wondering what the cost to roll them out over the whole township would be, so that we know, instead of going, well, okay, this is how much it is, but what do we think it would actually cost? And from there, I believe council can probably work out a budget over how many years it would like to attempt to do that. And the other thing that I've brought up on a number of occasions as well, and this is similar to a concern that Councillor Wilkins has brought up, is around what's going in the bin. Now, for me, if at some stage you're going to look at identifying significantly wrong stuff going into bins, i.e. building material going into green bins or building material going to recycle, bricks even going into the bin, into people's general waste bin. If you're going to identify that, we have to be extremely careful, because if the bins are not locked, it means that anyone can walk past your recycling bin on your footpath out the front of your house and throw in all of their food scraps or throw anything they like in there. So you can be as diligent as you like around your rubbish disposal. However, if other people choose to put stuff in the bin, there was an argument at one stage about looking at fines, which gladly has been dropped, because that it would have been insanity for people doing the right thing to possibly be hauled over the coals when they're not.
You can only do it on
waste.
an education basis. That's the only way you can do it.
That's right. So that's where I'm also mentioning about, if we're looking at the RFID, I'm just wondering what progress there's been made, if any, around the locking of bins, because there was, at one stage there was some, I know we had some report, I can't remember when, but it was about almost the bin lids being, and Rob may even know this, around the bins being magnetised, so that as they were lifted up, the trucks had the ability to open them at that point in time. So it wasn't
How do you
a big,
when you want to put your
yeah,
rubbish
big
in
impossible.
on?
Well, I'm not sure what the process was. I'm not sure if Councillor Ashby knows or remembers, or whether the CEO. But I know there was some talk about it at one stage. So I think it's a work in progress, and it's going to be really difficult to get it exactly right. There's some of the concerns that I've had over a period of time.
Councillor Bishop, you had something,
Just very-
and I think we need to move
just
on.
very briefly, the weight of the bins, and this is for Councillor Wilkinson, is not an issue. It is the contamination in the bins.
At the moment.
At the moment, weight is not an issue according to our meeting with East Waste, and they know the areas in Walkerville where who are the offenders.
Only in areas, they don't know the people.
They don't know the people, they know the areas. And I think it's an excellent idea that we do start tagging our bins. I think it's an excellent idea that we work towards getting our green bins also tagged. But we can't do that until we own the green bins.
Councillor Ashby and then Councillor Furlan.
Could I suggest an additional clause to the motion, or a new motion, in terms that council supports in principle the use of RFID identification of all bins, and we ask administration to prepare a feasibility study on the introduction over a period of years.
I'm happy to second that.
Yeah, look, I've got two concerns. One is, and Councillor Williams has pretty well summed it up, there are more issues with putting these tags on than solutions. So what is the end game for us? We're going to collect data that in large parts is meaningless because you're trying to monitor someone's behaviour. Well, you can't for a number of reasons. They're putting the wrong stuff in your bins. Then you're going to have damage to those pieces of equipment, then you're going to magnetise them. I know some of the other councils are already starting this process. My view is that let them do all the grunt work, and then when they've resolved all these issues or identified and come up with a good solution, then we should take it on. I think I caution getting on the bandwagon early because it sounds like a good idea without knowing exactly what we want to achieve, and hence why I think Councillor Ashby's idea of, broadening the horizon a bit and doing a bit of a feasibility to work out exactly what we want to achieve and the cost, because some of the feasibility might pull those things in and say, look, it's not going to be able to work until A, B and C has been resolved. We had a look at what other councils are doing. But I think it's a great idea, and I think it's where it's going to head down the future. I'm just wondering whether we're jumping the gun a bit.
I was on the last council, and we were in about year 2 when this was put, so that's 4 years ago. And it was first, and it was very expensive, and we said we couldn't afford it.
From memory, I think it was.
But I
about
don't think
120
waste was the subject on everyone's lips like it is today.
It wasn't $140 a tonne to dispose of it.
Pardon?
It wasn't $140 a tonne to dispose of it.
I think you're right. Yes, it was probably the disparity between green waste and hard waste wasn't like it is today. There is an amended motion.
What is the motion, Your
Well,
Worship?
the new motion that the council supports in principle radio frequency identification tags being installed on all new and replacement bins, and requested administration present a feasibility study to a future meeting of council. Are you happy with that, Councillor Ashby?
Yes,
I'm just wondering if you wanted to put a timeline rather than just
I would say prior to the next budget cycle. You want to be able to discuss it in the next budget period. So if you do it before the budget cycle, then we've got the hard cold facts before we start the budgeting. Are you happy to move that, Councillor Ashby? Yes. May I have a second, and then Councillor Williams? Discussed it quite a lot, so I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. You did have your hand up, didn't you? Yes. I thought I saw it go up. Right, we move to 14.3.8, which is the hard waste collection of mattresses. The motion is there. Does anyone have any comments regarding the papers? Councillor Wilkins, you've got your hand up, yes?
Yes, yeah, thanks, Mayor Fricker. I guess my question is, is $25 enough? I'm in support of something this size, having a fee attached to it.
That's what they charge in skip bins.
In
Mini skips, you know, when you hire a mini skip.
Yeah, they have to got more than $25.
I know, that's what I get charged on my mini skip.
How much more is it? Even a two.
For just the
Even a
mattress.
two.
No, just the additional charge for a mattress.
For a mattress, okay.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
the extra
That's
charge.
where we settled on the number from.
Okay.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Fricker. I'd be happy to move the recommendation, and just following on from something Councillor Wilkins had said about the last agenda point, Council found, well, there was a study or some information we had, and I'm pretty sure Ben brought this in the last WAG meeting, was that we didn't have information that suggested by charging amounts like this would increase significantly illegal dumping or people storing them because of the fee. I guess we're all fortunate, the area that we live in, but we haven't seen examples of that occurring here. And, you know, I don't believe it would start happening, you know, like finding mattresses dumped down the river and things like that. I don't think it would become a big issue because for most people in the area, probably the $25 is pretty affordable and only comparable to what it would cost them if they're having to take and dump it themselves. So I'd be happy to move the recommendation.
Councillor Bishop and then Councillor Coleman.
I would like us to remove the limit of 2 and say you don't buy mattresses every year. So if the family decide to re-mattress the household, there might be 5 mattresses to be got rid of, but they may not do that again for another 15 years. I don't think we have a limit on it. I think we remove the limit. It's my thoughts.
Councillor Coleman, do you wish to amend the motion then?
Yes, just remove a maximum of 2, just that we charge $25 per mattress fee.
Councillor Williams, are you supportive of that?
No, I wouldn't be, and I'll just my reasoning behind that is you could then find, because at that point we are still subsidising to a degree. We're still subsidising to a degree the collection of the mattress. So if you have a limit of 5 here in Walkerville, there are other councils that don't allow that, and we have people bring mattresses in from outside because it's cheaper to get rid of them in Walkerville, and you end up with a heap here. Now, that scenario may not happen similar to the dumping scenario I was talking about.
You're going to have a friend in Walkerville that you can dump the mattresses on their verge, and I'd say no.
Well, that's right, but that's why I think if you've got a restriction, that's just I thought I would rather it remain as it is, and that's also in support of WAG because that's the recommendation the WAG committee has put forward.
Councillor Bishop, just one moment. Councillor Bishop has moved that. Is there a seconder for the motion?
Can I speak to the second?
You may.
I'll support Councillor Bishop on that because I'd rather have people contribute to at least $25 is something, because anything, if they do have more mattresses and they are limited to 2, in a week's time, if they just went and put on there in the verge right in front of their house, how do you even prove that it was there? They could just say it was a guy across the road, it was a guy next door. At least you're encouraging people to be somewhat honest. And so, yeah, I'll support Councillor Bishop.
You, Councillor.
I'm just wondering how you classify the base. Is that a bed or is it something else?
Sorry?
You got the mattress and the
The
base.
ensemble.
No,
The ensemble.
this is just a mattress.
It doesn't. It says mattresses, but I can see some people arguing the point about it, saying, "Well, it's all one." Or you could say it's not 2.
Oh, it's so good.
Well, what the hell is it?
Sorry, that's over the top of my head.
Well, the issue is, I think only the mattress has the springs, and it's taking the springs and the thing apart, whereas the base doesn't have springs in it.
So you can throw that away without problem.
Yes.
That's got to go.
Okay.
It's going to go there at the at call.
Yeah.
Incinerated, so I've
Yeah.
always put-
We have an amendment to the motion. Hasn't been accepted by the mover, so I have to put the motion, the amendment to the council to then see if that becomes the motion. So the amendment is that the council, deletes the words with a maximum of 2. I'll put the vote. All those in favour of the amendment. The amendment now becomes the motion. So now I'll put the motion, which is that the council implement a $25 for mattress fee as part of the at-call hardware service. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? 3. Carried. Thank you. We now move on to 14.3.9, Green Waste Diversion Initiatives. Everyone's read the papers. Are there any questions regarding this? WAG then brought this to our attention. So are there any questions? If not, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Friggin. Not a question so much, more a comment. And I know that it was further in the report, but just so in case any elected members missed it, that point 3 in the recommendation, and I'm happy to remove the recommendation as it is, point 3 in the recommendation is specifically around getting feedback on the frequency of each bin and whether they're picked up weekly or fortnightly. So it is around considering how regularly the blue bin's picked up. It is currently weekly, and how regularly the green and recycled. So that's the intention of point 3 there, just in case anyone didn't do that.
Thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Joshi, are you seconding it?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? If not, does anyone wish to speak against the motion? Are you happy that I just put the motion? Councillor Williams, Councillor Joshi, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Now we move on to 14.3.10, the Local Heritage Development Plan Amendment, the progress update. You've all read the report. Are there any questions in the progress update? Is there any questions regarding this? Councillor Wilkins, I apologise, yes.
Okay. My only question is about where we're getting the funds from.
I'll ask Andrea to speak.
Your Worship, I'll answer the question. We're suggesting it's part of Budget Review 1, so we'll be seeking further funds. Budget Review 1 will be coming to Council in the October meeting for consideration. We'll be looking to see if there's some movement of other things that we might be able to deliver. Alternatively, it's potentially reducing the cost associated with these are funds that we just weren't expecting or anticipating, sadly. So we might have to reduce a project from somewhere else.
Any further comment? If not, Matt?
I was just going to comment, we have no choice.
Are you happy to move it?
I'm happy to move it.
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Furner? Anyone wish to speak to the motion?
I'm just in favour of it. I think we've done so much work to date, and it looks like it's been pretty good work.
Just
the way
annoying,
I've
it's
read
going to cost us more money.
And it'd be a pity to let it go at this stage, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Once again, also in favour of it. I think the community would expect us to do it.
Right, I'll put it to the vote then. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Thank you. 14.3.11. Thank you, Andrew. Walkerville Art Show sponsorship agreement. I think it's quite self-explanatory. Thank you, Councillor Wilkins.
And I'm happy to second it.
Councillor Bishop seconded. Everyone happy if we just put it to the vote? All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move to identification of items for individual consideration. I'll now call each agenda. So, I commence. 16.3.1, monthly financial report. 16.3.2, the works report. 16.3.3, the asset and capital works reporting. 16.3.4, benchmarking and performance reporting.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Councillor Furlan, Your Worship.
Did you? Oh.
Yes, sorry.
Probably me.
16.3.5, status of confidential orders. 16.3.6, alienation of community land consultation, Levi Caravan Park. 16.3.7, CEO Performance Review Committee Minutes, August 2020. 16.3.8, Women of Walkerville Committee Minutes, 8th of September 2020. 16.3.9, Waste Advisory Group Meeting Minutes, 22 July 2020. And then subsidiary 16.4.1, ERA Water Board Minutes, 27 August 2020. And outstanding Council Resolution 16.5. Yep. Would someone move the adoption of the other reports that aren't going to be called out? Thank you, Councillor Furlan, seconded Councillor Bishop. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now 16.3.1, the monthly financial report. Councillor Furlan.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify our net debt position is obviously the CAD less the cash deposits. We've got 8.3 million of rates owing as of the 31st of September. I'm just wondering if there's an update to the rates outstanding. I know they will get sent out. I'm just wondering if we're on track with the payment cycle.
Your Worship, introducing Monica Palmer, our new
Yes, finance person. Are you able to respond?
Yes, through Your Worship. Just clarifying that you're questioning the outstanding rate.
Yes.
Is that
yep.
correct? So this, as of date of this report, the 31st of August, there was 8.3 million outstanding.
Yep.
That were due on the 18th of the 9th. So we have had a reduction in that. I don't have the exact figures. I can take that on notice and email you.
Okay, yeah, that'll be good. Just an approximate. I probably should have emailed you today.
Sure.
But thank you.
Because not all of it will be, not everyone pays it in full, they pay it in quarters.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if, because it's obviously the highest
Yes.
now, I just wanted to see if we're cutting into that.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. 16.3.4, benchmarking and, sorry. Yes. May I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Bishop. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. So I need a beaver there. 16.3.4, benchmarking and performance reporting, May 2020. Councillor Furlan, you had a question there?
Yeah, look, just our revenue source, grants and non-rates income is the lowest, and I know we've been looking at trying to do with the grant side of things. I was just wondering if we have any sort of update on that as a performance area that we would like to tackle.
In terms of grants,
Yeah.
through Your Worship, I'll be producing reports into the council. I think that was one of my KPIs.
Yeah.
I think I know it is.
So you're right.
I can't recall how often, whether it's quarterly. I think I have to report quarterly.
Yes, I'm sure. Councillor Ashby, you had a question?
There's 120 or 30 pages in that report, and I find it quite mind-boggling to get through it and understand it. I think there's a lot of very valuable information and a lot of pretty bloody useless information in it. And I would like administration to analyse some of the more important aspects, the financial, the road rates and taxes bit that I keep on about all the time, and where we're really achieving good things and and identify specifically to the whole of the council where is the good and where is the bad. There are obviously areas where we're performing very well, and there are other areas where we're not doing so well. And I think we need to have that presented to us so that we can sit here and discuss it.
Like an executive summary.
Yeah. I just found that there's just a huge proliferation of information there that some of it probably interests some people more than others, and vice versa. But there are lines in there where it only represents 1 or 2% of our expenditure. Now, I don't think they're not the important things to consider. It's those items that are, up in the 5% plus at least, probably a bit more, and give us a report on what you think we can do to do this better, or how we might be able to improve on some of those figures. I'd like to see a more critical analysis of it, which I don't feel qualified to undertake. I assume it costs us quite a lot of money to get that information.
I think we've got to the point now, we've grown up with our benchmarking, that we need to fine-tune it so that we actually only ask them to benchmark on specific areas, and that will reduce the cost. And not at the last in February, Councillor Bishop requested that we look at other councils of the same size in, say, Western Australia or other states that are small like us, which we could probably benchmark more accurately with, perhaps not in the dollars, because some markets are more expensive than others. We're probably cheaper than Sydney to live in, for example.
Right.
But it can be more specific.
I don't know if it's appropriate at this stage or not, but I'd like to move something along those lines, that we ask administration to prepare a concise report on the more important features and where we can improve and their interpretation of it, I guess.
Probably just adding to that, maybe like a SWOT analysis in the executive summary, what the strengths that have come out, the weaknesses and the threats and areas that we need to, the good, the bad and the ugly.
Your Worship, if I could be indulged, councillors, and suggest that, if you were comfortable, Councillor Ashby, to also include in the motion that we come back to you with a recommendation of what the future benchmarking should include. The exercise started in 2016, and when it did start, Council had in fact created a committee of Council to look at identifying what it wanted benchmarked, and this is where the gist of all of this information came from. We've been going for a few years now, and I think we're at the point, as the Mayor has indicated, that a lot of this information, you're absolutely quite right, there's just so much of it, and are we hitting the mark? Are we hitting the mark in terms of where we need to be? Certainly we can look at the data that's been presented to us. It's been presented early this year. We can do a diagnostic on it. I'm not sure that's going to be very useful for Council, because it's getting to be a bit of an over a year old, nearly 2 year lens now, because a lot of this data takes more than 12 months to receive, or to gather the data out of the Grants Commission, and so it's always late for us. But that aside, there are some pertinent parts in the report that are still valuable to us, but there's a lot of stuff there that's not being benchmarked that potentially we should be looking at benchmarking. There is a recent benchmarking of services that Port Adelaide, Enfield, Marion and Charles Sturt have been working together for over 12 months, I think it is, and they came out as part of the Productivity Commissions, reporting where they had presented a benchmarking analysis that they had been doing. Theirs is very service focused. And it'd be useful, I think, if we could have a look at that, get our hands on that, and explore what they're actually benchmarking, what works for that council, and whether or not we should replicate it. Councillor Nenke might be able to speak to some of that, I don't know. Are you familiar with that?
I am, but I was, probably rather not comment too much on it. But I think, look, I'm probably more about shared services and what you're doing already for Campbelltown and alike is probably, in my eyes, better way to go.
Okay.
So, that's my thoughts. But,
Good. Okay, that's fine. No, that's okay. I just thought you might have had a greater insight than I do in terms of what's being benchmarked. So, Councillor Ashby, are you comfortable if the report that comes back into the chamber also includes what we should be doing that we're currently not doing?
Well, yes, either
in that
that or
benchmark.
workshop it at some stage, one or the other. Yeah, I think that's fine from at this stage. Otherwise, I can't see a heck of a, unless we do some proper analysis of it, I can't see much point in doing it at all.
No.
If I can just add one thing, maybe, Manny, is that, I mean, look, obviously I concentrate on certain things, as you know, asset management and the like. However, I mean, every council's at different maturity levels as well, and they also, every council's got different priorities and projects. I mean,
They're all in different cycles, particularly, for example, in assets.
That's right. I mean, I know that, for example, Port Enfield have got a massive amount of stormwater upgrade, so they're going to spend massive amounts of money on stormwater upgrade, not replacement. So how you compare, you know, somewhere like Walkerville is probably replacing, and I mean, other councils, not naming them, that their maturity in asset management would be anywhere near as high as other councils. So some would be more accurate in their regional funding ratio. This talks about sustainability ratio, but it's about how much data you know you've got and whatnot. So it's pretty hard to benchmark against other councils. And also, I mean, looking at Campbelltown, they've got a lot more reactive soils and whatnot. So, you know, they've got different requirements. Their roads break up faster. So it's pretty hard. I would really like us to set some serious benchmarks for ourselves and then review them every period. I mean, it's always great to know what other councils are doing, but we should be really honest with ourselves and try and put in some self-improvement measures.
Well, that's why when I met with CEO and Deputy Mayor, I said, I think we've got to the stage now we can really fine-tune this, pull out some ones that are key that we can compare with other councils, but I agree, there are others that we can say, right, we know it should be, you know, for our area it should be this, or we should be aiming for that, and then we can measure it. If we don't say we're going to measure it, we don't watch it.
That's right, yeah, great.
Yes, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Fricker. I support everything that's been said. What I would add to that is that we have been fine-tuning already, because if you remember, we dropped at one stage, included in the benchmark was the Adelaide City Council.
Yes.
And
that
I also recall, I think there was also it may have been a regional one at one stage as well. And
smaller one.
Yeah, and it was based very much on size, and we have already sort of drilled down and narrowed it down to get councils that are more like us, which we found obviously in the eastern region. And from reading through this, and I agree completely with the motion. I've been fortunate enough to have been involved with this since the start, and so I can sort of see, and I was quite glad to read through this and see some of the areas that you could pick out as improvements and how they related specifically to, and when we're talking about the cycles, specifically to the beautification and the improvement of the lived environment within the Walkerville Council area. And I know, once again, Councillor Bishop's been very, very big on that, as I have over the last few years. So that's something that I was really pleased with and seeing, but I do agree with you to drill down even further.
Would someone second Councillor Ashby's?
I'm happy to second it, and I would hate to see this benchmarking lost at any stage. It's something that council should continue to evolve, given the work that's gone into it.
Is it possible to put in something about reviewing the whole project? Councillor Nenke's suggestion about our own benchmarks, I think is probably an excellent idea, because I hadn't thought of it, but when you look at the difference in the councils benchmarking us against Port Adelaide, for argument's sake, seems a bit, or even Campbelltown, so whether we can...
So councillor, that part two, and a framework for future benchmarking exercises.
Yeah, that covers it.
Is that, yeah?
I think that more than adequately covers what we want to do.
Well, I'll put it to the vote then. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move to 16.4.1, the ERA Water Board minutes. Councillor Furlan.
Oh, no, that's okay. I've had a look and I'm okay with it.
Well, we still have to move that. No. Vanessa?
Yes, because we didn't adopt it as part of the recommendation.
So would you move that we receive a note? Thank you. May I have a seconder?
Yes.
Please. Thank you, Councillor Ashby. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Correspondence. The correspondence has been tabled. Would someone move that the correspondence be accepted, please? Thank you, Councillor Furlan. Councillor Josh, you seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried.
Your Worship, sorry, can I apologise and suggest to you that I erred when I declared my interest at the beginning of the meeting. I inadvertently identified 16.3.7, which in actual fact was the CEO performance review minutes.
Oh, yes,
I actually
yes.
meant 19.1, which is the meeting that I will be excluding myself from. So my apologies, Your Worship.
Thank you. Is there any urgent other business? No? If not, we'll move into confidential items. I'll explain to the people who are watching this that there are 6 items which administration is recommended to be considered in confidence, and should council resolve to consider the item in confidence, viewers will see a Town of Walkerville logo while the matter at hand is being considered. Council will move out of confidence before each consideration of the following matters. I now... Do we wait 2 minutes or another absent? Is Richard here? Yes. We now are up to 19.1, CEO 2019-2020 Performance Review Report. I request that someone move into confidence. Someone move. Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Second, Councillor Nenke. All those in favour? All those in favour? Thank you. Carried.
I also
Yes. Right. I wish to advise people viewing the meeting online, the Council resolved in accordance with Section 91(7) in brackets of the Local Government Act 1999, that the Council has ordered the report, attachment and minutes relevant to this agenda item be retained in confidence until the performance review process has been completed, and that the report marked as attachment B be retained in confidence for a period of 3 years. We now move to 19.2, the Walkerville Sports Club request for rent relief COVID-19. Council may seek to have this item considered in confidence as the information to be received, discussed or considered in relation to this agenda item relates to a request from Walkerville Sports Club for rent relief. So I now ask for someone to move we go into confidence. Councillor Coleman, seconded Councillor Bishop. All those in favour? All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. I wish to advise that in accordance with Section 93A of the Local Government Act 1999, the meeting will be closed to the public while Council considers the matter. Okay, I wish to advise the people viewing the meeting via online that council resolved in accordance with section 91(7) in brackets of the Local Government Act 1999 that the council has ordered that the report attachment and minutes relevant to this agenda item be retained in confidence until the matter's been finalised. We now go on to 19.3, the Levi Caravan Park tender. The council may seek to have this item considered in confidence as the information to be received, discussed or considered in relation to this agenda item relates to commercially competitive information. I now request that someone moves a motion that we go into confidence. Councillor Furlan, seconder. Councillor Bishop. All those in favour? All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We're now in confidence.
With the rain.
Yeah, nice. And say,
Yeah, that's right. 50 grams.
45 degrees.
Yeah. So we've got to go
Okay, I wish to advise people viewing this meeting online that council resolved in accordance with section 91(7) in brackets the Local Government Act 1999 that the council has ordered that the report attachment and minutes relevant to this agenda item to be retained in confidence for a period of 36 months or until the matter has been finalised. 19.4 Donnelly Watson Car Park discretionary rebate request. The council may seek to have this item considered in confidence as the information to be received, discussed or considered in relation to this agenda item relates to a request for a discretionary rate rebate. I therefore request someone that we move into confidence. Councillor Ashby, seconder. Councillor Joshi, all those in favour? Thank you, carried. And I wish to advise that the meeting wish to advise the people that are online that in accordance with section 93B, both in brackets, of the Local Government Act 1999, the meeting will be closed. The public while council considers this matter. Thank you. I wish to advise that council may seek to have this item considered in confidence as the information to be received, discussed or considered in relation to this agenda relates to a discretionary rate rebate. That's fine. We now get to 19.5. Good, the Watson Car Park, another discretionary rebate request. We may need to move into confidence. Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Councillor Joshi, seconded. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. We now move into confidence. Okay, people watching, in accordance with section 93B of the Local Government Act 1999, the meeting will be closed. The public while council considers the following matter, and that's 19.6. What I've got here. which is the Walkerville Developments Proprietary Limited Watson Car Park's discretionary rate request. So I now ask somebody to move us into confidence again, please. Councillor Bishop, seconded Councillor Ferdinand. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Thank you. I wish to advise people viewing this meeting via online that Council resolved in accordance with section 91(7) in brackets of the Local Government Act 1999 that the Council has ordered that the report, attachment and minutes relevant to this agenda items be retained in confidence until the matter has been finalised. We have moved out of confidence and therefore I now declare the meeting closed and thank you very much for joining us. Meeting closed at 10:13. Thank you.
Within our curfew.